Welcome to the CraveCast. I'm your host, Eric Mack, live from sunny Taos, New Mexico. And joining me live in the CNET studios in San Francisco are Kelsey Adams, Jeff Sparkman, and behind the controls, Stephen Beecham. And also, in the flesh there in the studio for the first time, crisscrossing the continent in the name of all that is geeky and just is Michael Franco.
Yay.
How's everyone doing?
All right, good.
We also have one more very special guest joining us live via Skype from somewhere on the campaign trail is the Transhumanist Party candidate for president of these United States, Zoltan Istvan. Welcome, sir.
Welcome.
Hey.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You got it. Thanks for joining us. And we're going to be talking to Zoltan here for a little bit. We're also going to do our year in review, the geeky year in review for 2015 in the second half of the show. If you have any questions for us or for Zoltan, you can tweet them at me at Eric C. Mack and at Crave. And also join us in the YouTube chat room. I believe we're at youtube.com/CNET. You can get to us through there, and then also on live stream as well. There's a couple of chat rooms going, so feel free to join the discussion and throw a question our way. And first, Zoltan, let's start with you. Tell us, you've been on the road, I think, for a few months now, driving across the South in a big coffin. Explain that to me.
Sure. Well, I am driving a 40-foot coffin across the country as part of my United States presidential campaign for the Transhumanist Party. And, one of our main goals is to try to overcome death using science and technology. And so a coffin is a very provocative symbol. And everywhere we go, people ask questions and want to come on board and say, why are you driving this wacky bus around? And, it's been a really interesting experience because people, a coffin is a kind of a controversial symbol. So it's worked really well for getting some attention to our campaign.
And what's the response been so far on the road?
Well, the response has been very different depending on which state we went into. We just went through the South, and of course, when you talk about conquering death, they're like, well, why do you want to conquer? We already have eternal life, if you're religious. But parts of, California and now the East Coast, especially Florida, have been much more embracing of life extension technologies and also weird technology ideas like, we have a robot on board, we have Google Glass, we have drones, we have all sorts of bizarre little things. So the reception has really been different all across the country. But generally speaking, we have had only welcome arms wherever we went.
Could I ask, the curtains look exactly, I'm not derailing, I swear, exactly like the ones we had when I was a very small child. Is this sort of a very old bus? You seem to have a futurist leaning.
Well, so, of course, my campaign is on a budget. It's a budget that is, pretty small compared to other presidential candidates. And the bus was also on a budget. And so we were able to afford a 1978 bus. So it's totally original. And yes, it's orange curtains and it's orange carpet. And it's very decked out like you would think the 70s would be like. We put up a disco ball sometimes and dance and stuff like that. But, in all honesty, it's very old and everything's breaking down. In fact, we just discovered a new oil leak today. So, the age of it is certainly one factor. And for a futurist, it's a little bit strange to be driving such an old bus. But the juxtaposition of those two things has been quite fun on the road, too.
So you pull out the drones and things and you show this to people when they come up and talk to you?
Yeah. So we have a 4-foot robot on board. And it's very interesting because it does like 1,000 different things. And so we can bring on people. And a lot of them have never seen such technology. And they never realized that drones are just about the size of your fist these days. There's a lot of different sizes. And we show them all sorts of things. But we also talk about our political platform. And, the main goal of the coffin bus is to drive from San Francisco, where I live, to Washington, D.C. to deliver a transhumanist Bill of Rights, which we're going to be doing in a couple days. We're at the very end of our journey. And the Transhumanist Bill of Rights is just this idea that we're trying to get the government to spend a lot more money on life extension, science, and technologies instead of wars and other things that we think are not as important as living indefinitely.
And so what is the, when you dig into the specifics, because you and I talked for quite a while a few months ago, and the interesting thing about your platform is I think it might sound crazier than it is to a lot of people, because there's a lot of stuff in there about, just basically improving healthcare.
Sorry, Eric, you broke up a little bit there at the very end, and I missed.
I just wonder what the response is when you dig into your platform, because a lot of it just has to do with improving healthcare for people. What's the response when you really get into the details?
Sure, sure. Well, we were just talking about this earlier. It really honestly seems like the younger generation, everyone young we meet, when we talk about improving healthcare, living indefinitely, they seem to be on board, whether they're conservative, whether they're liberal, whether they're religious, whether they're not. Generally, the millennial generation just like, this is great. The older people that we've met really seem to be like, well, we're not sure we want that. And, I don't know if I want to live forever because I'm already old and I'm kind of feeling bothered by life and whatever. So the reaction to our kind of campaign of spending a huge amount of money on healthcare and as opposed to, wars and other things like that has definitely been mixed. Most people are so interested in taxes and Social Security and just, foreign policy that it's been hard to say, look, this is a campaign about improving your health. This is a campaign about trying to make it so you don't ever have to die. You don't ever have to experience tragedy. But unfortunately, sometimes I got to be honest, it does fall on deaf ears, and it has been a bit of a challenge to get people to really to hear the message and say, wow, this could be something for our country to really embrace.
Isn't there a population growth issue? I'm sorry if that's a really basic transhumanist question.
No, and I got to be honest, it's the number one question we get asked all the time. It's this idea that, well, if everyone lives indefinitely, what's going to happen to the world's population? It's already so high, and certainly the Earth has been damaged by overpopulation. And Transhumanist Party and my own campaign believe in global warming. We believe that people are doing bad things to the Earth, and we'd like them to stop that. So we try to tell people that the Earth can actually handle a lot more people. Maybe double its amount. But the thing is, the resources have to be distributed differently. And we also, our main kind of environmental platform is to come up with mega engineering projects where we would, develop technologies to solve issues. For example, with the ozone layer, I know we're depleting it, but maybe we could fill it with something. And the other idea is, well, maybe we could also just cure cancer. If we spend $1 trillion trying to cure cancer, maybe we wouldn't worry so much about those kinds of things. So the Transhumanist Party and my platform really support these kinds of endeavors. But we're certainly also very conscious that reducing the carbon footprint is something that's important. But it's really tough when it comes to overpopulation, because there's no way that you would want to tell anyone that, hey, we can't continue growing, because these are families and people don't want to stop having families.
So what would be, I sort of feel like I'm at a town hall meeting, but what would be your top maybe 3 projects that you would fund or resources you would marshal to move towards this goal of people living forever?
Well, sure. I think one of our main goals in our kind of singular platform is we would like to dedicate $1 trillion to the field of life extension. The Iraq war was $6 trillion or something like that. And we would just say, look, defense spending in this country is right now about 20% of the GDP, and the science and technology budget is about 2%. So that's in a crazy, discrepancy. We want to make that a lot more even. And what we'd like to do is, if we didn't make it even, is put $1 trillion directly towards your health. So I specifically would like to embrace projects like an artificial heart. I would love to embrace projects like biohacking or bionics to eventually replace limbs and become a bit more machine-like, a bit stronger of a species. And I think we'd also like to spend a lot more money on stem cells and kind of, as controversial it is, I'd also like to spend a lot of money on gene therapy, because I think there's a possibility we might be able to wipe out hereditary diseases and Alzheimer's and things like that before we're even born. So this is the kind of places where we would put the money.
That's good.
I read an article that you were talking about microchipping Syrian refugees. Are you for microchipping all the human race or just Syrian refugees?
Well, so this is such a controversial question. One of the reasons, just full disclosure, I came up with the chipping of Syrian refugees is because it seems like right now, based on the House vote, America's not going to let in these refugees. I mean, Germany's letting in literally 50 times the amount we are. So this was a way to try to get the right and the left to maybe find a medium ground so that we could let in people that are coming from war zones. And I've been to war zones, covered them as a journalist, and I can tell you, having a child and a mother or something like this, living in a building that's been bombed out, we must do better than that. We actually, as humanitarians, as transhumanitarians, we need to find a place so everyone on the planet can live somewhere safely. But I do advocate for chipping everyone. I think in the future, everyone's going to be chipped. I have one right here in my hand. the Syrian refugees thing was, of course, that would be something that would be mandated in order to get into the country. And it wouldn't be, again, forever. It would just be for a few years to make sure that they're safe and we keep terrorism out. But I think in the future, everyone's going to want to have microchips. I was just at the airport, and it's like, I lost my paper ticket, and then I had to go get it on my phone, and it didn't work. And all of a sudden, I'm like, if I just had it in my hand and I could swipe it, it would be so simple. It'd be like my ID, everything right there. And the same thing, I just went to Starbucks, got a coffee, had to dig out my credit card. The credit card machine didn't work somewhere. And all of a sudden, it's like, a chip would be a lot simpler and all these things. So I'm a big believer in the next 5 and 10 years, many, many people will get them for just convenience reasons alone.
Now, some privacy issues there, obviously.
So we're going to be looking at our favorite science stories of the year. I wonder if you had a favorite advance, technological or science this year that most interested you from the past 12 months.
Sure. Well, God, there's been so many amazing stories. But I used to be a swimmer and a water polo player, and one of the favorite stories that came out this year was this idea that you could have compressed oxygen in a tube, and they would give it to people that are drown victims, and all of a sudden apply it so that this oxygen would go through your system very quickly. And I thought for competition and sporting, like swimming events, this would be amazing. I mean, you could free dive for a half hour underwater, and I've been a diver, scuba diver my whole life, so that was one story that really has resonated with me, and I look forward to those kinds of those kinds of technologies changing what it means to be a human being, and they're just also really fun.
Are you coming up against a lot of technophobia out there? When you talk about microchipping people or microchipping everyone, and like Kelsey said, there are some privacy issues with that. Are you finding that people are resistant to the idea, or more open than we'd suspect?
Yeah, indeed. I'm finding a lot of resistance to the microchipping, and I've talked to Eric about this before too. Is generally in the South, microchip is really I hate to say it, but the mark of the beast from a religious perspective, and they see it as something that's kind of fulfilling a biblical prophecy. And most people on the East and West Coast don't think like that, but in huge parts of the country do. And every time it's like a conversation was going good, it was going great. I was telling them about technology. Everyone loves robots. And all of a sudden I talk about microchipping, and wow, the atmosphere, the energy in any conversation changes in certain parts of the country. I was on the Alex Jones show. Part of our tour, we stopped in Austin, Texas, and Alex Jones, the show had us on for a 45-minute interview, and all they wanted to talk about was microchipping. They were so worried about it. And, transhumanism is bringing so many wonderful technologies. We're curing blind, or, bringing microchips into the optical nerves so blind people can see, cochlear implants, and all these other things. And those are the things that I like to focus on. Or, I have a 5-year-old daughter who's just started public school. Now, she's not chipped, but I have said, it would be nice to know always where she is. There are certain security measures that would be nice to have. But when you talk about this, people freak out. And I wish, and I'm hoping over the next few years, as media talks a little bit more about chips, people will start to grow accustomed to it. Because I think if you had told everyone 20 years ago we'd all be holding cell phones in our pocket and sleeping right next to them, people would have said, no way. But look, we're all doing it now, and I think we've grown quite well used to that.
So what is the chip in your hand? What does it do for you? What is the benefit?
Well, right now, the version I have is not very sophisticated. I think in a few months, the next generation one is coming out. It's an NFC RFID chip. And so you can do things like, if you want to give your business card to someone, you can scan your hand on their phone, and it'll just immediately transfer your business card to them. You can also start your bus with it if you have the right software and application. You just wave your hand by it. You can get into all the security systems that you want. For example, if the CNET building has some kind of security system, you can just swipe your hand and get into it once you've programmed it. So it enables a huge amount of convenience. But the thing I really want is I want my credit card tied to my hand. Because if you think about the amount of times a day that you pay for something, it would be so much easier than having to lug around a purse. And also, it carries all your medical information. So if you get an emergency and they need to know your blood type, or they need to know that you're allergic to Advil or aspirin or something like that, then it will notify them immediately.
Cool. So we actually lost our host, Eric, for a second. He dropped off of Skype. It's happened before. So,
Actually, the entire broadcast has been starting over a couple times while I was watching on the live stream page.
I know, because our internet in this building is just not working.
But you did get that all on tape, right? Because that was fascinating. This has been a really great
recorded. Yeah,
conversation.
Definitely. So we're trying to get Eric back, but our internet is not working in this building because there's construction going on, which is fun. So, that's what's happening. You guys have any more questions for Mr. Istvan?
So just on the off chance that you don't win the presidential election, What are your plans after the election's over? Do you think you'd run again in 4 years and just try to build up momentum, or what do you think you're
So,
going to do?
you know, it's a very interesting question I've been thinking a lot about. I got to say, we have some sort of big news. I'm not sure if it's big news. You never know how these things work, but we have been approached by a major television conglomerate, Lionsgate, and we have signed to try to make a reality TV show out of the bus. If everything went well, we would be filming in sometime April or May. Again, these things are all, you never know how these things unfold, whether they actually make airtime or not and stuff like that. But I'm excited because we would do probably a 6 to 8 part TV series that would then air somewhere. And so I would be traveling around the country on this bus with a lot more organization. I'm understaffed, everyone's volunteer right now, but we might have some real guns and money and things like that put to the power of this Immortality Bus. And we could also fix the oil leaks. And we lost our fan belt a while back, so the bus always overheats. Keeping the bus going, the Immortality Bus going, has been a pretty big challenge. But that's what I'm hoping to be doing in about 6 months' time, is doing a series like that. And of course, I'll try to probably write a book on my experiences crossing the country, because we've gone, so many different places. We went to Alcor, we went to Terrasem 2 days ago, which is kind of spirituality, transhumanism. And, we've just gone all over the place. So I think there's a lot to write about, and I'll definitely be looking forward to putting out a book about it.
Sounds great.
Where do your volunteers come from? Seems like I'm just wondering what kinds of groups.
Well, most of them are actually transhumanists, and they're transhumanists from social media that I've met. But, of course, I live in San Francisco, so we have a broad base of people. And nobody's full-time doing volunteers, but everyone, except for Rowan, who you might have seen in the back. He's in the camera.
Hi.
Hey there.
And there he is. And, everyone's been contributing a little bit and helping us. Like I said, one of the things about my campaign is I don't take donations. I'm trying to make a stand against campaign finance reform to change it. So this has been my way of doing it. And so everyone's just helping out. And so we have about 50 volunteers scattered. Some do an hour a week, some do 5 hours a week, and some do even less. So it's really a matter of, just kind of getting everyone coordinated. And we've been trying to have everyone on the bus, too, to help out and just have a lot of fun.
Cool. Anybody else have any questions?
I had a chance to interview Neil Harbison. Do you know him? He's a cyborg. I believe he lives in Spain. He has a condition where he can only see in black and white, and he wound up having a antenna developed for him that he wears out at the top of his head, and it translates color into sound, so he can see sound. And one of the things his institute is doing is advocating for cyborg rights, and I wonder if that is part of your platform or something you've thought about. As we start to wear more technology and have more technology built into our bodies, it seems like we might need legislation to keep track with that. And he's been discriminated against. He's not been allowed into movie theaters because they've been afraid that he's going to record the film and things like that. So it seems like it fits well with what you're talking about.
No, it does. And we just actually did, one of our last stories was so fascinating. So we picked up an African-American transhumanist, Matreo One, who's a hip-hop artist in Harlem, and he actually took a Greyhound bus down, and then we picked him up in Montgomery, Alabama, at the Freedom Riders kind of museum area. And then we actually parked our bus in front of the Freedom Riders. Now, of course, back in the 50, 60 years ago, they were fighting for civil rights. But we brought Maitreya on as kind of that person who would help us transition to the new era of civil rights. And I'm a big believer that the next 10 years is going to have a lot of battles about cyborg and transhumanist rights. It's why we're trying to deliver a transhumanist Bill of Rights to be kind of initiate that conversation, because you can already see it with designer babies. Do we augment intelligence of our children? But what if China does it first and we choose not to? We don't want a scenario where, like George W. Bush would stop stem cell funding for almost 7, 8 years. We want to embrace these things, but of course, many people across the country won't. So we had this really fun, kind of event at the Freedom Riders Museum where we sort of discussed civil rights versus cyborg rights. What are the comparisons, and where are we going in the future? And it was really fun. And yeah, we're going to have a great video coming out about that soon. And having Maitreya explain it also, because he's kind of a hip hop artist living in Harlem, really made the connection for us. So I'm a big believer that cyborg rights are incredibly important. The idea of here we are dealing with LGBT issues, which of course the Transhumanist Party completely supports. But the idea is we're going to go even beyond that. I mean, will some people be male and female? Will some people be non-gender at all? Maybe a lot of people will be non-gender. We're going beyond an age when maybe biological sex won't even be happening. Maybe kids won't happen because we'll have, won't want to in the virtual world. And there's also the idea of ectogenesis or artificial wombs. The era that we're coming into of transhumanist rights, cyborg rights, is filled with landmines, but it's also filled with so much promise. And of course, a huge amount of what I'm trying to do is just tell people about it, because the worst thing we can do is turn our back to it and not talk about it. The very best thing we can do is start to explore it now. And hopefully by exploring it, we will find a path that is absolutely nonviolent and absolutely leads people to find exactly what they want out of the future and out of their life now.
I think we got Eric back, by the way.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm having all kinds of connection problems. But if you can hear me, Zoltan, I'm curious to kind of wrap things up. I think you're actually a character in the crowdsourced sci-fi novel that we wrote with our readers here over the last month. It's actually we're still putting the finishing touches on it, including kind of the role that you're going to play. And so, it takes place around 2050. Where we have a transhumanist president. And so I wonder what you think 2050 might look like.
Oh, he's frozen.
Oh, no.
He's a cyborg and he's frozen.
2050 will have better video
he just
calls.
Instantly leaped to the year
I think
2050.
is the most important.
Yeah. Oh, I'll just go check. I'll be right back. I'll tell you.
2050 will. Hang on, he's calling back.
Is that him calling back in?
From the future.
Yeah, sorry everyone. We're having construction. Yesterday the Ethernet was just off. It didn't even
Yeah.
work in the building. So we're having internet connection issues here. But here, he's back. We got him back.
Sorry, I missed your call.
Oh,
You can leave your name.
that's his
and your
voicemail.
number.
No.
So that's what it'll be like in 2050, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll try to get him back in, and while we're working on that, maybe we can go ahead and dig into our year in review. Am I still coming through okay, or am I freezing?
Yeah, you're
too?
fine. You're fine.
Okay. So a couple of some of the biggest stories this year that we covered had to do with space, and I think probably the biggest one of all it would be the New Horizons flyby of Pluto, which was something that was almost a decade in the making, and then it finally happened in July. And the science is actually still coming back. Like new data dumps every week come back with crazy videos. And it's really interesting because I think Pluto turned out to be a lot weirder and more interesting than we probably thought. I mean, for decades, you learn about Pluto, and usually it's just kind of this blue dot on a diagram of the solar system, and then it got knocked off that diagram altogether when it was, demoted from being a planet. But over the course of the last few months, we've learned that of all the weird things, Pluto might actually have blue skies. If you're standing on the surface of Pluto, you might see a blue sky. It's very kind of colorful compared to I think what we imagined. It has this like a heart-shaped feature. It's kind of like the Great Plains of Pluto are in the shape of a heart, and then surrounding at least one edge of that, you have water ice mountains, basically massive glaciers, and there might actually be ice volcanoes. It's possible that the center or the subsurface part of Pluto is actually warmed by like nuclear radiation, like radioactive decay, and that's causing perhaps cryovolcanoes. I mean, it's really crazy stuff. Have you guys followed? You followed it, I know, Michael Franco, a little bit. Anything I left out about Pluto? What kind of caught your eye this year about it?
I think the most interesting thing about the Pluto mission was how much it got people energized about NASA again. I think it was really nice for me to see our readers and even just people I talked to get really, really jazzed about the space program all over again. The moon landing, a lot of people, that's sort of the last time I think that we did something so spectacular. And Pluto, I think, re-energized folks about astronomy and about NASA. So I really enjoyed seeing that.
Well, there was a similar wave of enthusiasm from Mars. You remember Mohawk Guy?
That's true.
the
Yeah.
rovers?
Mm-hmm.
Both important things.
Mm-hmm.
And another space story that was big this year, very tidily, I think might have come to something of a conclusion today. About half an hour before we came on the air here, I published a story on CNET about those weird spots on Ceres. And Ceres, if you don't know, CERES is it's the biggest asteroid technically a dwarf planet in the asteroid belt. And NASA sent a spacecraft there called Dawn, and it's been orbiting it since around March. And very quickly, as it was approaching Ceres, it found that it had these really, really bright spots. I mean, it almost looks like the planet has headlights. Um, just these really bright spots. And, we polled our readers, and, there were all kinds of theories about what it could be. Everything from actual headlights on like an alien ship to ice to salt. And today it looks like the latter is probably what it is. There's two studies out in the journal Nature today using NASA data from Dawn, and it looks like those really bright spots like there are basically, in essence, they're Epsom salts, or actually a salt that's closely related to Epsom salt. So not the most exciting discovery, but it has other implications. That would appear to indicate that suspicions that there is all kinds of frozen water underneath the surface of Ceres are probably true. There's probably a huge briny ocean underneath the surface, and it's probably frozen, but there's probably all kinds of frozen salt water beneath this. Perhaps more frozen water inside that planet than all the fresh water on Earth. So, just really kind of interesting to find out what our solar system and the universe is made up of. And that's been the other interesting trend for me this year in science and space, is just the continuing trend that there's water everywhere. We used to think that everything was just like dead rocks beyond Earth. It was all just, gases and gas giants and basically frozen rocks. But it turns out, this year earlier, we found flowing water on Mars, kind of intermittent flowing water, again, salt water. And then we also found that Ganymede, which is the largest moon in the solar system, it also is harboring a subsurface ocean. And so, and then we already knew about Ceres, we knew about Europa. That's Ganymede right there, I think. And Enceladus, another moon of Saturn, it also has water basically shooting out of its south pole. And we flew the Cassini spacecraft through those plumes about a month and a half ago. So, I mean,
Interestingly, they send drones through the plumes of
solar
clouds.
system and the universe turns out to be a lot more wet and weird than I think we ever guessed.
Hey, by the way, we got Zoltan back. He's back on the line.
And he probably wants to leave.
Hey,
you guys
Zoltan,
hear me
can you hear
okay?
me?
Yeah, we hear you. And he's on
Okay,
he's
great.
on a phone Skype now.
I'm on the phone Skype. Sorry for dropping off. It's been the story of the bus.
That's all right.
Some things work for a while and they break.
Yeah, I know. Well, so I was asking you what you thought 2050 might look like, because you're a character in our crowdsourced sci-fi novel set in 2050.
Yes, I heard the question. And first off, I think it's awesome what you're doing. I was just telling some friends about the crowdsourced novel, and I just think it's frankly a bit of history, especially as a fiction writer myself. But if you ask me 2050, it's a bit far out there, and I'm going to say I think the idea of mind uploading will already exist, and we'll probably have quite a bit of our lives totally embedded in the virtual world. I'm not sure that. I'm not going to go out and say half the population will be uploaded yet, but I'm going to say at least 10% of the population would probably have started messing around with mind uploading and trying to find immortality through that. And that's just going to create a huge kind of quandary of what it really means to be alive as a human being. And is your virtual self more real than your other self? And of course, if you get into virtual reality, you create 100 of yourselves. And, so what happens then to population? It's a whole different ball game, but I think by 2050, we'll definitely have that. And I'll be one of those people that's looking forward to it. And of course, with that comes artificial intelligence and potentially the singularity. So, whether that's even possible to put into a novel anymore is become so quite incredible. But I'm a big believer by then we'll have AI and mind uploading.
And you're actually a little bit more cautious about the potential future of artificial intelligence than I think a lot of people would guess based on your platform. Is that fair?
Yeah. No, I am a little bit more cautious because AI means having an entity that's smarter than us on planet Earth. I'm not sure I really want that. I'm advocating for an artificial intelligence that we would be merged with, something that would never be allowed on its own without some type of human, intervention or human connected directly to it, or maybe a group of humans. So there's a whole bunch of things that I would be advocating for like that, because yeah, we're talking about something that could totally revolutionize planet Earth, and I'm not sure I want to take steps that quickly despite my love of technology.
And so, another thing we were talking about in our year in review here was drones. Hey, Michael Franco, why don't you kind of give us a quick roundup of where drones were this year?
Wait, shouldn't we? I'm sorry. Shouldn't we say goodbye to our guest first? He said he wanted to leave, and it's been half an hour.
Oh yeah, do you need to get going, Zoltan?
I do. I'm so sorry,
Okay.
but I've been so appreciative to have been on your show, and I'm gonna perhaps driving. I probably won't watch it while I'm driving, but we are
Please don't.
heading into North Carolina, and yeah, and thank you so much for having me on, and I'm gonna continue to watch this show, and wish you guys all the best. It's been really fun to speak to you.
Likewise.
Thanks. Best of luck on the campaign trail.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
everyone.
All right.
So
All right.
drones, I think the certainly the stories that got the most attention on CNET related to drones were the ones involving drone smackdowns. It seemed people really love to see drones take a dive, and but one of the stories I wrote that sort of involved that brought up more issues was the story about the firefighters blasting the drone out of the sky with their fire hose, and that brought up a lot of commentary on who was right and who was wrong there. Were the firefighters in their right to destroy this man's drone? The firefighters didn't own that piece of property. They didn't own the air, the air around it, and the drone didn't really interfere with what they were doing. It stayed back. They sort of, you see them point at it and kind of get the idea to shoot it with the fire hose. And
Well, if it was distracting them, that counts as interfering.
which could be a problem. Absolutely, yeah. So it brought up a lot of interesting questions about who had the right here, and should the guy be reimbursed for his damaged drone, or was he doing something wrong? And there's no clear answer. There's really, people can fall on both sides of that debate. And so I think we're going to see a lot more attention being paid to drone rules and regulations. I don't think that the new FAA need to register your drone is going to be enough. That's certainly a first step, but that's not really making any rules. It's sort of just saying you need to read this little booklet about drone safety and give us your name. So
people always read the instruction book.
of course, yeah.
There's a real interesting overlap between citizen journalism and invading privacy here.
Sorry, I'm trying to fast forward to where I see the firefighters spotting the drone now.
There
There it is.
Too bad there's
Wow.
no sound on this video.
Yeah.
Now, did this come because there was another story of drones actually kind of interfering in one of the wildfires that went across the highway in Southern California? Do you know if this came before or after that?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with the other story.
I don't remember that one either, Eric. Do you remember? Could you?
There
tell
was
us
there was a
about
wildfire, and the wildfire it actually burned across a highway. It burned some cars on the interstate, and some drones. They actually the emergency responders said they actually were interfering with the firefighting in that incident. So I was just curious if it came before or after that.
It was back in July.
Yeah.
I think this was after then. I think.
And what's the other one with? Oh yeah, the one where they delivered a bundle of drugs to the prison yard.
Yeah.
You covered that one too.
Apparently, that wasn't even a
Yeah.
unique incident.
That's right. It wasn't. I think it was the second time it had happened. And yeah, so a drone dropped a bundle of drugs and money, I think, into behind the walls of a prison, and chaos ensued. There was just a big riot of people trying to get to that package, and so I think drones are just starting to, like, they can be used for good. They can deliver defibrillators to people who need them or people who live in remote locations, but
And checking out unsafe areas to see if people can go in.
Yeah.
Disaster relief
yep.
stuff.
So, but like any piece of technology, right? There's going to be, the uses are as creative as people are. So
There's always a criminal use.
yeah,
yes.
yeah. And
Straight for it.
there was a story, I don't know that we covered it, but a woman, heard a noise outside her window in the UK and opened the window, and there was a drone lurking out there filming, spying, being a peeping Tom drone, So it's going to be interesting, and I think there's no stopping the technology now. Regulating it is a possibility, but it's unmanned, right? Like by its very nature. So it's out there. You might not even know who's controlling it. So
Correct me if I'm wrong. In 2016, if you buy a drone, you're supposed to register it with the FAA, correct?
you are, but like I was saying,
how's that gonna work?
just right. That's just registering. It's just like giving your name and saying I own a drone, and yes, I've read the the little booklet that tells you about safe drone usage,
Yeah.
like don't fly it near an airport and things like that.
And also tell us about Camp Nerd Fitness. I know that
Yes.
personally for you, that was the big story of 2015 on a
Yeah,
personal level.
yeah, it was. I had found Nerd Fitness earlier in the year, and that's a website developed by Steve Cam, who sort of found himself playing a lot of video games and not being real active, and decided that he was going to turn his life into a video game. And he started traveling all over the world, doing some crazy things, and he built a website called Nerd Fitness, all about it, and also developed a group called the Rebellion, and you sort of join the Rebellion, and it helps you level up your life by doing different tasks and things like that. And this was the second year that he's run this camp, and it was in northern Georgia, and I got to go down there for 4 nights, and I expected it to be kind of goofy fun, but it was really a bit transformative for me. It was such a non-judgmental environment. You know, you go to most gyms or fitness things, and it's all about, you know, there's a lot of ego there, and a lot of showing off, and you know, I've never felt real comfortable in those environments, and this was completely the opposite. And what was nice for me was that so there was this sense of not being judged, which was nice, but I got to drop my judgmental side. You know, I have a lot of that going on in my brain. Thanks, Dad. And so, you know, after a day or two there, that just dropped away, and it just was really a warm and welcoming environment. I mean, there were moments also where, you know, you get your tray of food and you go sit down and you felt like you were back in high school. But because everybody was sort of on the same page with that, it was cool to just sit down and say, hey, or not, or you could just sit by yourself and nobody was going to say, oh, look at the loser over there, you know, with this.
Well,
with
it's
this
not
book
so
or
you could
whatever.
hear it, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I really loved it. I actually just signed up for next year's
nice.
Nerd Fitness. Yeah. I'm going to go on my own, not as part of an article. And Steve actually has a book coming out next year called Level Up Your Life, which sort of talks
nice.
about like his journey. And so far, I just started reading it. It's a pretty good book.
I do find that games kind of splash back onto my life like that. If you spend a lot of time on the computer or a console, you're not out there moving and so forth, but you're doing things. You're making goals. You're achieving things in your game, and then you start to think, well, wait a minute. I just spent 2 hours setting up my housing space in this MMO. Maybe I should go do some actual dishes. Is that crazy? Am I being crazy here?
Yeah. I mean, Steve's point was that he felt sort of a lack of satisfaction in his life and in his job, and he was getting that satisfaction through gaming, because you could have epic moments in games and, you know, to be a hero and all this kind of stuff. And then like the light bulb went off for him one day, and he said, it's got to be the reverse. My life's got to be the epic quest, and the video games. You know, he still plays video games from time to time, but
Yeah, it doesn't have to
he's
be
put
either
it in
or.
balance. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to doing that again next year.
Sounds like
So
fun.
what about you guys, the other 3 folks there in studio? I wonder what your highlights of 2015 were on the Cravey side of things.
Sparkman.
Oh, you're assuming I can remember this far back.
He doesn't sleep a lot.
I don't sleep a lot actually. Well, like I mean, like I feel like I'm kind of on the edge of cravitude, since I'm not always writing, and I'm just kind
And
of
yet
like,
you epitomize it so well.
I'm just here to look pretty. So I don't know. I'm still tripping on the whole like ice volcanoes thing on Pluto. I mean, that's
Yeah, how does that work?
I know. I'm just like, that's like something I want to see in a video game.
I always get excited about the space oceans because I'm hoping for giant squid.
Oh, right,
Mhm,
right.
Yeah.
mhm.
I mean, I think
Europa Report style, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically the emphasis on water is people keep looking for water because it's associated with life, right? I don't know if you were doing such a great roundup of all the water we're finding, but that's kind of why people are hung up on that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
I think those bright spots on Ceres with the salt, it's probably salt licks for aliens.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Really, really large space deer or something.
I have to say, I found the fact that we figured out what those are and they're just salt was pretty disappointing. You know, the mystery of it was a lot more exciting than
Yeah.
the reality.
Well, I mean,
of
that's
it.
like, that's how it usually goes.
I thought
Yeah,
they'd be
yeah.
ice. Actually, I read a very convincing explanation that they weren't bright at all, but it was just a matter of sampling and rendering.
And that makes sense.
So I think the fact that it is something is great. Go salt.
Yay, salt.
Well, and what about what we have to look forward to? There are still a few weeks left to go in the year. There's at least a few movies coming up. I think there's one coming up in like
Oh,
a
that
week or
that indie
something.
flick? Yeah.
small little film.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Am I the only one who
Is it
has
this
not
one?
bought my tickets for it yet?
I haven't.
I don't have
haven't.
tickets.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Captain America?
Of course, we're talking about Captain.
He's talking about The Force Awakens.
Yeah, I got my tickets. I
Here's
got
the
tickets for
trailer
the
for
first 2
Captain America.
nights, so I'm set.
I had a lot of highlights this year, but they're all completely wiped from my mind by the existence of the Captain America Civil War trailer, which is
That sounds like a segue to me.
I was really worried. Well, Beecham started it. I was really worried that this would not live up to the previous movie because I thought Winter Soldier was so good, and then they're trying to cram so much into the Civil War storyline. How could this possibly all fit? But this trailer is really character focused. It really gets all that was important. It doesn't look like it's going to be a big mess. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Also, Black Panther looks really cool.
Yeah, he does.
And
I mean,
it
in all
broke it
seriousness-
broke a record, didn't it? It was the number one trailer ever, right? It had something like 6 million views in the first hour.
Really?
Yeah, it's the most.
Really?
I think it's the most widely viewed trailer ever.
And
movie
only
trailer
1/4
ever.
of those were from me.
I was just going to say this is one of the most underrated franchises, but maybe I'm underrating how overrated it is, or something.
It's really well, sometimes these things are all over the map and inconsistent, but the Captain America movies specifically have had a real arc to it. There's been character development across the movies. You get a sense of actually seeing the same character, and that they're being written by someone who cares about the people involved, I think.
And they've been hyping it for years and years, even before, just putting his shield in different movies and stuff before. Like, wasn't it in Iron Man? Like, his shield was in the background. So they've always had this on the back of their mind, for sure.
Yeah, they've definitely built a big interconnecting universe here, which is great.
I just saw a guy flying
I love
with
that.
wings. I'm going to go rewind
That's
that a little
Falcon,
bit.
my boyfriend.
Oh, here he goes.
Did I say that out loud?
Because people that shoot at you usually wind up shooting at me too.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm done.
And so, I mean, who has plans for The Force Awakens? Let's just get right to it.
Well, part of my plan is watching the original trilogy again, and I actually just handed in a story today that should be up on the site. I don't know, today or tomorrow, and about how very disappointed I was going back and watching the very first Star Wars movie. I'm not sure that I have ever seen it twice, but probably somewhere in my childhood I did watch it again. But it had just grown into this magical, incredible film. I saw it when I was 9 the first time, and going back and watching it a couple nights ago was so disappointing. And I sort of wish I didn't do that. I think because it has some really terrible dialogue, and the costumes weren't like quite up to snuff, and I wasn't looking to be nitpicky. I was looking to fall in love with it all over again.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't. I found the characters kind of annoying, and interestingly, some of the scenes that have loomed large in my memory, the Vader and Obi-Wan lightsaber battle and the cantina scene, like those scenes went on, or the trash compactor scenes, like they went on for a long time in my head in the movie, and in reality they're 30 seconds, a minute and a half maybe, and it's gone. So
That's a kid's perception, basically. Everything's more
yeah.
intense. Everything takes
Yeah.
longer. We
Yep.
we really invest in things, and
yeah. So in the article I sort of said that probably what I'm mourning is my 9-year-old sense of wonder and imagination, because the movie didn't change. I clearly have changed.
Yeah.
I'm sort of like, this is
That's
kinda dumb.
Well,
interesting.
the movie did change because
Yes.
George Lucas
Well, yeah.
was CGI
Aside
that
from
kind
that,
of
yeah.
watered
Yeah.
it down. So.
Yeah, and the only thing I think that is drags more than what you're talking about is I went through and I watched all 6, and we watched them chronologically, chronologically. So we started with episode 1 with my 8-year-old daughter.
why would you do that to
and-
a child?
You know what? I mean, it was really
Let's start
interesting
off
to
with
get her take.
Terrorists.
'Cause, I mean, she absolutely loved Jar Jar Binks. Nothing was more funny to her than Jar Jar Binks, and then she became totally fascinated by the time gap. I mean, I still hear her talking with all her friends, like, "Did you know that number 4 is from 1977?" Like their mind is blown.
Sequels and prequels. Yeah.
It's a weird thing. But episode 1. That movie is 60% pod race. It's
Yeah.
just crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
reals.
Totally.
Even the
So,
Lego game based on it feels like it's like a lot pod races.
Can I just say about this tariff thing? People always complain that they shouldn't have started with trade sanctions. That's somehow inherently uninteresting. I'm gonna disagree here.
That's okay. You can be wrong.
One of the big questions that I wanted answered in this first movie was, we're told in the trilogy that the Jedi were diplomats, that they actually helped keep this enormous intergalactic government running. and that that the lightsabers were the tool of a more elegant age, a more civilized age. But I mean, so they're martial artists who can chop your limbs off. How does that actually relate to diplomacy? Like, I actually wanted to see that happening, and that is what that whole first opening of that movie is supposed to do. It shows you, okay, these are Jedi at the height of their powers, doing the thing they're actually useful for, and this is what it looks like. So it's totally welcome to say that that failed, but I don't think it was a bad thing to try.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
The thing that my kids noticed, like after I've never actually gone more than a few months without having seen the Star Wars movies.
Wow.
Like since, like literally since I saw them the first time, I've always had them like on video and like I always end up watching them. So I've never had like this giant time stretch where I, can go back and be more objective. That said, I do kind of wonder why like the Jedi dress the same as everybody on Tatooine. Like
Yeah.
Uncle Owen looked like a Jedi.
That's a retcon for sure.
Yeah, I mean, these are not Jedi clothes. This is what they wore on Tatooine because it's hot as balls out there, and they want to have robes. So, like, then that became like the uniform for Jedi, and even Luke doesn't
retroactively.
Yeah,
Right.
Luke doesn't even wear Jedi clothes. The more he becomes like a Jedi.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In fact, speaking of retcons, this thing with who shot first, Han or Greedo? I think that's actually an example of what you're talking about, Michael. Once the guy who made this movie was no longer a 9-year-old himself, he stopped understanding what that was about and started needing to rewrite it from an adult perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, to wrap things up, because we're out of time here, a story I'm working on for later today. I'm going to go ahead and take a poll, and then you'll have to find the official results on cnet.com/crave. But so a poll was done. I'm writing up the results. What like toy or gadget from Star Wars would you guys most like to have? Like the lightsaber, the hover bike, the Millennium Falcon. What?
Oh, so big or small? I mean, it's hard to compare a lightsaber to the Millennium Falcon.
I don't know if the Millennium Falcon was.
I
Actually
think
on
of the
this
Millennium
stage.
Falcon like the equivalent of like the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier that like that one rich kid got and nobody else got.
I think Michael's asking, do you mean a full-size version or just a toy version of it?
That is
No,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how the poll was phrased, but I know Death Star was actually one of the options you could select.
Where are you gonna keep that?
Yeah, you
Takes
don't
up
have
so
a big
much room.
garage.
Gonna orbit
Two
it
car
on my planet.
garage should do it.
If I was gonna get a Death Star, I'd put in railings at least.
You just don't get the idea, Jeff.
I guess not.
Death Star.
Yeah, well, it's not. Yeah, it's supposed to be the Death Star for other people.
Well, I would take a lightsaber in a heartbeat, especially if it came with the cool ability to just reach for it and have it swoop into my hand.
I just know I would cut my freaking arms off like immediately. I'd be like, "Hey, how's this work?" I'm trying to think of some Star Warsy thing that I would not kill myself with inadvertently, and kind of not really.
Well, it would cauterize your wound, so you wouldn't die.
Well, yeah, but then what
Still
am I going to
suck.
swing the thing around with? I got no arms left. Be like
definitely
Black
will
Knight or something.
I'll leave you with this. Lightsaber is number 2.
Oh.
Survey of 2,000 Americans. Lightsaber was the second most popular Star Wars gadget. So you will have to find out what number 1 is a little bit later on.
Oh,
Damn you and your
anticipation.
That
There
made
you
me
go.
want to. That made me want to find out. Darn you!
It's a deep tease. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for dealing with our technical difficulties. I heard about 80% of what everyone else said today. And I think we learned today not to get Jeff Ginsu knives for Christmas. So,
Not again, anyway.
thanks for joining us, everyone. Stay tuned for the next CraveCast in the year 2016. And, of course, all the stories we talked about you can find on cnet.com/crave. Check that out, and we will talk to you next time. For Michael Franco, Stephen Beecham, Kelsey Adams, and Jeff Sparkman, get well, Bonnie. We missed you today.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.